Hi guys, this is jjlockhART back again this week with a new art piece. This time I decided to do something traditional. I'm working on CANSON watercolor paper and I'm using a red color erase, PRISMACOLOR erase pencil. And I'm using this to sketch out my lines first. I start with basic shapes and then I slowly add a little more detail, trying to get the figure right. I'm still working on the proportions of her neck a little bit, and I guess the idea behind this drawing is it's a piece inspired by the Ridley Scott movie Legend. I believe the movie came out in 1985, so it is an older film. It did come out before I was born, and I watched it the first time when I was an adult, and I thought it was a very interesting movie. And then recently my daughter, she's 4 years old, she recently watched it and she absolutely loves the movie. And she is kind of odd, I guess, because she likes all these weird movies with monsters, and she loves fantasy and sci-fi stuff, but she really enjoyed this movie. And also recently at one of the cons I was at, I met somebody who later became one of my Instagram followers, and they actually requested to see a legend piece, and I just thought that was a wonderful idea, and so I decided to draw something inspired by the movie. And at first I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to include the Tim Curry demon, and while I was just doing a little research and looking at images from the movie, and then I watched the movie again just to get a little bit of inspiration, I decided I wanted to draw the main female character in that really dark outfit. And so that's what I did. As far as like the composition, I tried to keep it, I guess I wanted to use the geometry of the dress that the female main character uses in the scene where it's really dark. And I guess her collar is like a triangle. It's very geometric, and I liked how geometric it looked and how dark it was, and so I decided to fit this within the horns of the demon. And so I guess I was playing around with different compositions, and this is the composition that I thought looked the best. It was just simple geometry and it looked clean. So I decided to go with that, and so I sketched different I guess compositions, and then I decided that I was gonna, at first I wasn't sure if I was gonna do it digital or traditional, and I even played around with it for a little bit in the digital, and I didn't there was something about it that just didn't feel quite right. I felt like I needed to really take it in traditional medium, and since the movie is so dark, I knew that I wanted to mostly use ink for the majority of it, so that's what I decided to do, just mostly ink. And I decided to work on the watercolor paper in order to use a little bit of water on the ink and sort of give it a gray wash. So at first I'm using the microns to sort of delineate the features of her face, and I decided to go with a hatching and a stippling with the ink in order to create some dimension to the drawing and some texture and variety. And so I used a variety of different size microns. I also used a couple of Faber-Castell drawing ink pens as well. And then I went in with a little bit of ink and water wash with just a water fountain pen, and I added a little bit of gradient, and then so I guess I went back and forth between washes and the microns, and just doing some fine lines on the crown, or I guess it's the crown or headpiece that she's wearing. I was trying to use the hatching and the stippling in order to create the texture in, I guess, in depth of the curves and high areas and low areas of this, I guess, this demon face. It had a lot of wrinkles, and it was just, I guess, the horn area was like just very veiny, and I don't know, there was a lot of really cool textures on it. It was sort of difficult to find a good reference photo for the demon. I looked and looked around, and there wasn't a lot of very good reference photos, but I was able to find one close enough of his face so that I could really look at it and just, I obviously don't copy it like, line by line, because that would be impossible. So I just used it as a guide, and I looked and tried to figure out where the deeper, darker areas were, and then the lighter, brighter areas, in order to give the face the contours and the wrinkles and the texture of the skin, or I guess latex or whatever they used in order to create this effect on Tim Curry. The center of his, I guess his forehead, or the center of his head, it was very almost gross looking, to be honest. It almost looked like chewed up gum. I know that sounds odd, but that's sort of like the texture that was on his forehead in the reference photo, and I had a very hard time trying to figure out how to draw that area, or I guess show the texture. It was very kind of gross to look at. Like I said, it just looked like chewed up gum or something. It was like really like bubbly and bumpy, and so I tried to create a sort of a, I guess, a similar texture with the stippling on his forehead, but it was quite difficult. And I decided to go back with the stippling just to give the, I guess, the demon more texture, and also to create, I guess, areas where the color was even darker. And then I went in there with the that same fountain, the watercolor pen, with a little bit of water and ink in there, and I just decided to just give it a little bit of smoothness to it, and then I added a little bit of red. And in retrospect, I felt like I used a little too much water on it, and I do end up sort of getting a paper towel and sopping up some of that water. And then I went back in there with the red color erase again to give it a more vibrant red. Since I had already put ink down when I was wetting it, it sort of made it a little bit gray, and so I wanted the red to be a little bit more vibrant, especially in the areas that were higher, like obviously to give it dimension. So I went in again and added more red in order to make it really stand out. And then for the collar area, I decided that I wanted to add a texture, but I couldn't quite decide which texture I wanted to add. So I went with this sort of tight, curl, chaotic line, twisty lines in the background to give texture. And I also used a very fine micron in order for the texture to be very fine so that it wouldn't call too much attention. But I did use these crazy little squiggle lines in order to darken the area, but also to give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of, I guess, unease, since I felt that went well with the rest of the, I guess, the theme of the movie. And so afterwards I decided to go in there and I shaded the I guess that big her outfit in order to give it a little bit of dimension. And then I went in with a white UNIBALL pen to give it some highlights, and then I also used that in order to better define the character, the female character, against that big collar or outfit that she's wearing. And then after that I decided to go in there with some gold ink and just give it a nice outline all over. I decided to use the gold because everything in the picture already looked very dark, already in the composition looked dark. I was just using mostly just reds, blacks, and grays. I did add a little bit of a blue-green tint to the horns, just to add a little bit of variety. But I decided that the gold would look nice, just a nice clean outline around it would help sort of, I guess, blend it together and make it look cohesive and also shine and look pretty, I guess. And so I just outlined the entire thing in the gold. And there's a close-up, and you can see a little bit of all of the different materials that I used. And as always, all the supplies will be in the description box below. And I just want to thank you guys so much for watching. And if you guys are interested in watching the video that I posted last week, it's right there on the corner, and you can just click it to watch. And thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.